which is pretty crazy to think about that it's taken us this long to actually kind of like finalize and get things out. But it just kind of like takes a long time, like a lot of life kind of gets in the way. And once it had got to like a certain point, like where we were, already 3 years behind schedule or whatever, it's like, well, what's an extra, 18 months whilst we kind of really kind of put the touches on it to make it what we would want to be representing with the music. So it was like kind of got to the point of no return, and then it was like, all right, we'll do whatever.
That's Joe Clayton of Pijn. Hey everyone, welcome to the Trendcrusher podcast. I'm Peter K. I spoke to Joe about Pijn's latest album, From Low Beams of Hope. If you haven't already heard it, do check out the link in the show notes. The album is also released on the band's own label, Floodlit Records. I'm leaving a link to that also in the show notes. Do sign up to their mailing list. Lots more to look forward from the label in this year. And if you've done all that, why don't you hit subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening to, leave a rating on Spotify or any of the podcast platforms you're listening to. Now with all of that out of the way, here's my chat with Joe. Hi Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Hi Peter, thanks for having me on.
So I have to confess this right up front. It's only thanks to me doing research for this episode and interview that I actually figured out how to say the band name. And I don't know why I always kept saying like Pinge, or I never said pigeon, but it's Pijn. And I'm like, fuck, why was it so hard? So let's be honest. How many times do you have to end up correcting people, the band name?
I mean, it happens a lot, but sometimes I just don't worry about correcting people. It's sort of kind of just like leave it and let everyone find out on their own, unfortunately.
So in case you go back and listen to some episodes, I actually spoke to Hippotractor and I said
awesome.
Pinge then, and they were like,
Yeah.
Is that how it is? I was like, I don't know. I'll figure out in a few weeks. And I kind of just threw that out there, but here I am. But all of that aside, it's first of all great speaking to you, and I've been listening to you guys for a while, so I'm glad. First of all, there's a new album which is titled "From Low Beams of Hope." Really love it, and yeah, it also coincides. It also makes a great way for us to have a chat.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us, and it's really cool that you've already spoken to Hippotractor because their album is brilliant. I'm really looking forward to getting to see them play a lot later in the year, which would be really cool.
And I must say, right, before we get into the album, it's been very strange that I've been kind of playing a lot of like post-rock, progressive kind of music. I had Hippotractor on the podcast. I had Hiroshima on the podcast recently. And it's been a while since I've listened to a lot of post-rock. And I kind of said it on the last episode. It's the monsoon. It's the rains here in India. So I fucking hate it.
Yeah.
I just hate like everything that it brings along. So I think like post-rock is one of the comforting ways to deal with that. But back on to you guys. I mean, it's been a while, honestly, since you guys released an album. So what's it been like kind of reading some of the reviews? Any response that kind of made you go like, wow, these guys really missed us?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing has been slightly like bizarre, and I feel very like out of the loop on how to do any of these things. Like even sort of having people take the time to like listen and to the record and to ask us questions, like kind of like that they've come around to their own sort of like interpretation of this music that I've been like sitting on for however many years is like it's quite daunting actually. Like it's not something I was quite like sort of ready for. But it's been really nice. It's sort of like the sense of relief to sort of finally have something out. And no matter how weird it is that it's finally out and everyone's hearing it, it's really nice that people seem to be enjoying it.
So I had an indication that there was new music because a couple of years ago I spoke to Connor Marshall from Conjurer,
Oh
and
yeah,
I was like, hey, I can't remember if it was on the episode or post that. I was like, hey, do you know the guys from, again, I think I said Pinch then or Pine. Now I'm
yeah,
saying, what are they up to? And he kind of alluded that you guys were working uh, on new
yeah.
music. But let's kind of take everyone behind the scenes and kind of paint the picture for them, right? Because it's been a few years, and I
Hmm.
heard in a previous interview that you did earlier this year that y'all are kind of like a collective, and the core element of the collective went from three members to five. So,
Yeah,
can you just explain that for all of us who haven't heard the
yeah,
interview,
yeah.
and how did that kind of impact both the writing and recording process of the album?
Well, it was all kind of like one sort of process. The sort of like previous iteration of the band being mainly just like drums, bass, and guitar, and playing whatever shows we could, and kind of like getting out a lot was a very fun version of the band, but not really how like I wanted the music to be sort of realized and to be presented. So for me, I always wanted to try and have more of the instrumentation, the sort of wider range of things that we use, the strings, the sort of like tape loops and synth sounds, um, lap steel when we could get it, things like that. Like I always wanted a broader sort of sonic palette across the shows, and when following like the it was generally like out of the back of the pandemic and everyone's kind of lives were heading in slightly different directions, I found it a kind of like opportunity to sort of reach out to people that I knew had like abilities in like a couple of different instruments and could maybe sort of like, Ed, for example, who plays bass, he also is like an amazing saxophonist. So by like bringing in someone that can play like two instruments and like comes from a different musical background, it influenced the writing process in that I had access to all these different sounds, and also kind of like locked down like this is sort of more how we want to present the songs and the music live. So we need to make sure that we kind of like try to have as many things going on stage as we can to do the songs justice, really. So yeah, I guess it was over the course of like a couple of years we'd had songs written, and then this sort of like shift in a lineup and like allowing me to um try to sort of like bring in more people. And with that, obviously came like big delays in time. So you probably spoke to Connor around the time that we had at least like one or maybe two of the tracks from the album written. Um,
Oh, wow, it's been in
and
the works for that long.
yeah, there's um, a couple of people had noticed that we were playing like the opening song from the album maybe late in 2019 and 20 early 2020, just before um, everything sort of shut down for a little while. So they were kind of all, like one, at least one of the songs was already in the set at that point, um, which is pretty crazy to think about that it's taken us this long to actually kind of like finalize and get things out. Um, but it just kind of like takes a long time. Like a lot of life kind of gets in the way, and once it had got to like a certain point, like where we were, already 3 years behind schedule or whatever. It's like, well, what's an extra, 18 months whilst we kind of really kind of put the touches on it to make it what we would want to be representing with the music. So it was like, yeah, we kind of got to the point of no return, and then it was like, yeah, all right, we'll do whatever.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because like going back to that time in 2022 to be specific, right? There was 2021 and 2022 where there were so many new albums being released. that it kind of got really overwhelming and crazy. And I think,
Yeah.
at least with, I think, I would say the US, UK, you had chances to record, right?
Yeah.
And that couple of years, everyone went. I mean, I know labels were still backed up
Yeah.
with release from that time, right? So it is
Yeah.
uh, kind of crazy. But let's be honest. I mean, you guys have been busy in terms of putting out releases. You did even do a reimagined version of your album Loss and stuff like that. Was there a point, and I'm very tempted to ask this question as I do to a lot of musicians, is at which point did you realize that, okay, you know what? We're done kind of working around on this album, tweaking and working on it. Like this is now it finally ready, right?
Yeah.
Because as a creative person, you always want to go back and kind of just make some changes or do stuff. So like where do you draw that like finish line or final line of sorts?
It's really difficult. It's really difficult. And it's something that like comes up like a lot for me personally as well with like my work as a studio engineer because I will want to tweak things until like I'm like completely happy. But it's taken a lot of years of practice to be like spotting the point where there are like the more time I'm spending, the smaller and smaller are like the rewards for where we're getting. Um, so I kind of had to have that approach with like the musical side as well as the technical side in this case. And I think just being a bit more used to, okay, this is the point, we're going to put a pin in it, and that's that done. And it took some sort of like larger kind of like changes that I wanted to make to the record that um prompted any further like changes to that. So like for one example would be like on a previous because there was like a finished version of the album sort of maybe like a couple of years ago or like very close to finished and that had an extra track on it that was supposed to be this sort of like a callback of all the major like themes in the record but done in different way and with like melodic lines from other songs played on different instruments than they were in their original song. But I couldn't ever get it to the point where I was totally happy with it. So when I kind of had a bit more time, sat back, and I was just like, you know what, we don't need it. It's like I'm kind of just doing it as an exercise in trying to do this thing, and like I'm not quite getting what I wanted. So that was a very strict like get rid of that. Now I can like free myself up to work on the four songs and kind of get those finished off and not have to worry about this extra one that was giving me a lot of headache.
So is that song shelved or is it for like a future release? I have to ask.
It's it's been snuck onto a release from or like part of it has been put onto the Patience and Perspective release that we did in November as like a sort of tour exclusive um tape almost. And so that's like a two tracks, lots of like ambient recordings and kind of improv bits and sections from like demos and stuff that we had. And within that release, there is a version of what that final song was. It's very different to like the rest of the album, so it always did stand out. But it had a couple of the sort of motifs and stuff from the tracks in there. So I kind of just like buried them a little bit on the version that was released to make it more just it's kind of like a just a guitar and drums and some drone with little string sections rather than these kind of full blown this is that bit from that song sort of thing.
Okay, got it. Now, this is normally the toughest part of any interview or chat I do. The time where I ask you to play a song from the latest release. So you've got four songs that you've been really closely working with
Yeah.
for a while. For those who have no idea and haven't heard the album as yet, which song would you like me to play from Low Beans
Ooh.
of Hope, and why?
Uh, so I reckon, well, I mean, do I have to take in the time
No,
into
no. It's
consideration?
it's it's your show. Go for it.
I would say uh A Thousand Tired Lives, the last track.
Okay.
Um it's the longest one. So sorry to eat up all the time. But you know, it's the gonna be the it's one that we haven't quite figured out how to play live altogether yet. It's really difficult, kind of like subtle rhythmic changes, and the song was kind of written with a point of like we're going to try and do like a one riff song with like a build into a one riff song. So as a sort of exercise in songwriting, it's possibly my favorite one. But with it being the last one, it's going to be neglected all the time.
Awesome. So here's A Thousand Tired Lives. And if you're still here, that was A Thousand Tired Lives by Pine, and I'm talking to Joe from the band. Now, I want to quickly kind of move on to something which I kind of held back from at the start. This is actually your first release on your own label, Floodlit Records. Quick reaction. How tired are you of packaging and stuffing envelopes and all of that? Because I'm actually on your mailing list, so I know the kind of work that you guys have been doing on just
Yeah.
the packaging.
Well, I went through a phase of being extremely tired of it because we pressed 500 copies of the vinyl for the first run, and I had the fantastic idea of hand stamping some envelopes that would house a download code and a separate insert. Uh, and then I was looking into all the options of how I could get the Bandcamp download codes kind of printed onto these. And other than like typing each one in, um, I couldn't quite figure it out like a viable way. So I had to hand write on these things, these lovely inserts that were printed by Misc Print, like hand number in one corner, and then hand write a download code in the bottom left. And you can see, I mean, it's not great audio, but you can see for yourself, Peter, that this one I had to scribble out because I messed it up completely. I think there's about 30 of those that I did wrong.
Oh my
um,
God.
so yeah, I had to write out about 530 or so of those, stamp 500 envelopes, put them into 500 records. And now I am sort of like surrounded by mailers and bubble wrap and tape. And my girlfriend is livid because it's taken over the house a little bit. But she's been wonderful and she helped me assemble quite a lot of them. Well, she did like basically just sat and did 250 of them whilst I was running around and stressing. So
Wow.
she's been very supportive and wonderful. So that's been a blessing. Um, but
I
yeah,
think I think this is one of the things nobody tells you about self-releasing, right?
yeah, just like, oh, the amount of time it takes, like, it's like, yeah, this has been like full time. So the week of the release, it was like I was working every single day from about like 8 o'clock in the morning till about 7 or so, just like packing up the pre-orders and trying to get them out and doing little bits and pieces that I needed to beforehand. And I really didn't like, because I wasn't sure, especially with it being our own label, I wasn't sure of like the sort of number that we would sell or anything like that. So to have kind of like sold as many as we did and for it to have taken up as much of my time is like really humbling and really like flattering as well. It's like, yeah, this is really nice. So it gave me a lot of time to listen to like quite a few albums and podcasts and stuff whilst I was packaging up those orders. So I think the first day I was really doing it, I put out a call to for people to suggest a load of music to me, and that was good to kind of just dive into everyone's suggestions whilst it took a lot longer than I thought it was going to.
But okay, I know this may be a little too soon to ask, and please don't tell your girlfriend I asked this question. Do you have any other releases planned on the label? Like probably other
Yes.
bands or side projects? Oh my God.
Yeah. There's there are three other releases that will be happening this year for sure, possibly four. So but I don't think I'll do anything quite as over the top as having to write and package like all these things individually. This was it was a learning curve.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But okay, on to something else I had to kind of ask you and I couldn't resist. So the reason I actually first asked Connor about Pine is because this shouldn't be a surprise to you. I'm actually a huge fan of Curse These Metal Hands. And
Oh, amazing, thank you.
yeah, and I really enjoyed that release. What did come as a surprise is because I had no idea, right, of who these bands were and stuff like that. So if you could just kind of humor me and tell me what's up with the band, because I actually noticed that you all are playing Arch Tangent this year, which I'm very jealous
Yep.
of. Everyone who kind of
Uh,
saw. A friend of mine from India actually flew for Arch Tangent last year, and I was like,
oh,
"Fuck, did
amazing.
you catch Curse These Metal Hands?" And he just looked at me, and I was like, "Fuck, I should have told him earlier." But
Oh
yeah,
no.
what can you tell
Um,
us?
yeah, well, so Casey's Metal Hands is like the most fun, most daft project that any of us get to do. And the only downside is that like our schedules are absolutely rammed. And so it is so difficult to kind of like fit in between the sort of 9 to 5s that like some of the Pine band members have with Conjurer's touring schedule, with Pine's touring schedule, and then my studio schedule as well. And it's like we always find ourselves with like the last couple of years, there's only been like, one weekend other than Arctangent in the entire year that we can actually like get together. Um, and that's normally the week before Arctangent when we realize that we have to practice and relearn how to play the songs because we were about to go and do it at this incredible festival. Um, so this year has seen us do slightly more in that we there's like uh, one new track and like some little bits in the works, and so we decided to at least record this one track because if it's taking us, 4 years or so to write one song, then it'll be a long time before we have another sort of full length album ready to go for that. So yeah, we started recording for that. We've got the drums down and kind of everything sort of like set. We just need to try and get ourselves in a room together again to finish it off. But I'll be seeing the Conjurer Gang later this month, and we'll sort of like solidify some plans. And then next month we have our one practice, and then Arctangent again. So yeah, I think what normally happens is that once Arctangent is out the way, we all kind of like have to go back to our normal day job bands and concentrate on those. But we may try to set a little bit more Curses Not Hands time aside.
Awesome. That's something really encouraging, and I'm glad at least you'll have one song. So hopefully that
Yeah,
sees the light of day very soon. Uh,
hopefully.
and like I mentioned at the start, right? I mean, I did speak to Hippo Tractor uh, earlier this month, actually last month. Can't believe it's
Oh
already been
wow.
a month.
Yeah.
And I know it's a few months away, but you guys are playing a tour in October and November. You're also joined by Sugar Horse. What are you
Mm.
looking forward to from that? I mean, you're also playing Damnation Festival as part of that, which is
Yeah.
fucking awesome.
Damnation is huge. Like it's absolutely massive for us. I've sort of been to Damnation a lot since maybe 2014 or something. I've kind of tried to go like every year. And then when they moved to Manchester and they moved to a venue that's just a couple of miles away from where I live, it's even more now of like hallowed ground. So yeah, to get an invite to play this year is incredible, and for it to be at the end of that really cool tour with Hippotractor and Sugar Horse is even better. Um, they both got like incredible albums. One of them's already out. The Hippotractor one's already out, and the Sugar Horse one is coming out much later this year. I think in October. So it's going to be really good to experience their new music at terrifying volume, really. Um, we've played a couple of shows with the Sugar Horse guys, but not really spent that much time together. So I think that would be nice just to sort of get to know those guys a bit better as well.
Yeah, I mean the Hippo Tractor guys were pretty kicked, and you know what? I think that's one of the cool things about Europe, right? I mean, you just cross a few hours across the border, and you're in a new country, so
Yeah.
that definitely helps. Uh, I didn't originally plan on asking this, but since you did mention that you spent a lot of time taking recommendations and listening to music and podcasts, uh,
Hmm.
anything that kind of stood out for you that you want to kind of share with all our listeners? Any music that you really
Uh,
dug, metal or
well,
not? It's okay.
I I think the one I see that you did an interview with them, but the new Paul Bearer album,
Oh,
um,
that was really
yeah,
good.
is really good. Yeah, that's been a fairly regular listen. Scarcity, who are on Frenza. They'd only had, I think there's three tracks out from that album. But in terms of terrifying, unsettling black metal, like that's the one. It sounds like there's an alarm going on through the first song that they released, and it just like puts you on edge and kind of like actually makes you feel a bit scared. And the new Ulcerate album, I've been listening to quite a lot. Uh, and then podcast wise, I'd, my sister had recommended I listen to Off Menu because I think she'd heard Pine and the Kirsty's Metal Hands like hot sauce get mentioned on there. So I
Oh,
started giving
wow.
that a go as well.
That's cool. I mean, didn't you guys do a beer also? I can't remember now. I
Well, there's a company who are a brewery who are based in Manchester who uh made a beer and called it like called it Kirsty's Metal Hands.
Yeah, because when
And
I was
so
looking up, it came up as beer, and I was like, wait, I don't remember this, but okay, this makes
yeah,
sense.
I've not had it yet. They said they were going to send us some complimentary beers, but they haven't arrived, so I can't say whether it's any good or not. But maybe I'll get down to the brewery and give them an earful.
Okay, cool. So lots to look forward to from Pine, and also, like you mentioned, uh, Floodlit recording. So I'm definitely going to leave uh, the link to the mailing list because I think everyone should kind of
Oh, that'd be
follow you
brilliant.
guys
Thank you.
and just kind of stay up to date because I feel especially with like smaller labels and like stuff like you're doing, I mean, it's insane when I'm thinking about it, like signing 500 copies of vinyl. It's
Stupid decision, but I made my bed.
no, I'm pretty sure like somebody who's listening to this now realizes like, oh, it's just not someone who kind of like did it. It actually took some effort and
Yeah,
time and all of that. So they'll
yeah.
appreciate it far more. But yeah, I can actually keep going on and on, but want to definitely be mindful of time. Any final words?
Thanks.
Anything else you want to add to all who's tuned in?
No, I mean, just like thank you for your kind words on the record, and for letting a 12-minute song be in the middle of your podcast. I hope it's not too much dead air. You can probably cut the drone at the end. You can maybe pull that a little shorter if you need. But yeah, no, thank you very much, and it's great to have the record out and for people to be able to hear it now.
Yeah. So if you haven't already, I'm going to leave the links to all in the show notes. And yeah, if you get a copy of the vinyl, why don't you write a letter back to Joe and tell him how much that meant to you, right? I think you can take a little effort and send it
Yeah.
back.
That'd be wonderful.
All right. Thanks so much, Joe. Really appreciate you
Thank you
taking
so
time out
much.
and speaking to me.
Thank you very much.
And that was Joe from Pine. And that kind of caps up great episodes on post rock. If you haven't already heard, I spoke to O Hiroshima, Hippotractor, and now Pine. Do check out those episodes. I'm going to leave those links also in the show notes. That's all for me. All I'm going to say is hit subscribe and also follow me on social media because I've got a very interesting episode coming out later this week. See you all then. Cheers.